On this? Yes? No? Maybe so? Yeah, so we didn't finish, but how do we feel with how it was going? Oh, okay. Because I know it was a lot of to do and maybe a short time. This is the kind of stuff you should expect to see, come the 18th, right? Something like this. Maybe in combination with something like yesterday's to-do list, right? Like, combination of those two things, I don't know, might be like almost exactly what it is, yeah? So, like, you should keep that in mind, yeah? Let's go over this. So I went around and asked a bunch of people, like, what they would want to review. And I heard fetch was up there a lot. I heard a little bit of axios. I heard a little bit of async await. We're probably not going to go over async await today, but we are going to go over fetch, axios, and promise chaining so that we can start parsing some of those things in our mind, because I think a lot of people think that async await only works with axios. That's not true. They're totally not connected at all. I know this is my last day until the 4th, but you're in good hands. Jenya and John are leading reviews. So is Carlos. Pretty much on every day. So like you can see it all on Canvas. It's all mapped out. You have another project that you'll be able to work on as well after the Pokemon one. You're going to be building Blackjack 21, right? And so you can if you're fast, if you're a speed demon, right, like you can keep just building on it, right? Maybe like the real game, you like split, right? You can double down your bets. Like there's a lot of things you could do. So anyway, it's gonna be a great week. I'm disappointed I won't be there, but I'll be in a good situation, so that's okay. Don't worry about me. Index.html. Let's just set up our files. I will be on a plane for a really long time though, so that's gonna be pretty negative. It's going to be really weird when I have to do my workout. Okay. What? Yeah, I'm probably going to get thrown off the plane in the air. Okay, so let's go ahead and call this like posts. And let's go ahead and add a select, because that's what the directions said to do. I'm also going to add an options tag in here that just is going to be one that defaults so that people can't select it, and I'll just make it say like select a person. How do I make sure that you cannot click on this? Yeah, disable, right? So I'm going to say disable, and how do I make sure that this is always the first one already showing? What was that whisper? Somebody? Yeah, selected. Thank you, Sam. I hear it all. I'm a vampire. Literally. Anyway, let's go ahead and open this path and rock and roll. Oh, yeah. Okay. I've had like a headache all day, but it's going away with the adrenaline rush of the crowd. Okay. This looks pretty good so far. We should have our dev tools open at all times. Oops. Let's make this a little bit bigger. Okay. So we want to wait for our content to load before we do anything, right? So we're going to do the one way that we've learned so far. There actually is another way. That's a lot easier. But yeah, whatever. I guess I can like kind of show this, but like don't get too caught up and bothered by it right now. But we can make our script tag to say /index.js, and I can just add the word async right here. And then I don't need that like add event listener DOM content loaded. Wow. But a lot of code that you see will be with the DOM content loaded, so that's why I've been like not telling you. Yeah. And I can. Let's make sure that this does work the way I'm thinking. So let's just say like let select equal document dot query selector. And let's go ahead and just grab the select. And then let's console.log select. So if this doesn't work the way I'm thinking, what would we see? No. Okay, well let's actually try it then. Without async there. So if I put async there, we'll go and we get null. But now let's go ahead and put async there. And when I refresh, we get the select. So it works, right? You could write this instead of DOM content loaded. Yeah. I feel like we're there because everybody is doing DOM content loaded, so now you might as well know about it. A lot, like, it's like relatively new, right? So like a lot of code you'll see will be DOM content loaded, and so like you're entering a field that's been around for a while, and if you don't know DOM content loaded very well, you won't look like you know what you're talking about, you know? So it's super important that you learn that. Right, yeah, there's a lot of shorter ways to do a lot of things that you'll pick up as we go. Anyway, so I'm just going to keep going in our index file. So we want to be able to fetch from this API. So let's go ahead and read the documentation and see if we can learn a little bit more about it. Okay, so we can go, ooh, resources. Do any of these look like they might give us the users? Yeah. Okay, so, yeah, that looks really good. That looks like it's got all the users. And the names are called name. Okay. You could also do username. So I'm going to copy this as my path. And then let's go fetch. Well, let's create a function we can fire it. So we'll say like fetch data, and I'll pass in this URL, and then I'm also going to pass in a callback function that's like build select, which I know I'm calling two functions that don't exist right now, but this is just how I would like it written. So I'm going to try to make my dream come true. Oh, we don't need this anymore. And so let's go ahead and first write fetch data. So I'll say const fetch data, and I'm saying that this is going to take in a URL as well as a callback. What kind of function should I make this? Oh, right, I'm not doing async await yet, right? Okay, that's fine. So now I'm just writing fetch, right? So I'll say fetch. Fetch is built in, and I'm going to fetch the URL. And when I make a fetch, fetch returns what? Yeah, fetch returns a promise. And so when I have a promise, I can chain promises. Okay, that's really important. When we're doing async await, we don't need to do chaining because we can wait for code to come before we move to the next line. But when we're just calling something like this, we can't. So we have to chain from our promises. We chain by writing .then, passing in some argument. I'm going to call this res, short for response, because that seems clear to me. And this whole thing is really a callback function, right? And so I'm going to put in a debugger, and it's going to complain that build selects doesn't exist. So I'm just going to also quickly make a build select that doesn't do anything. It's just empty, but now it won't throw an error. So let's go ahead and try this. We'll refresh the page. And we get this. We get caught in our debugger inside of our fetch. And we can examine our res. Right? Remember, writing in the console to see where you're at and call variables of your code, you have to be inside the debugger to do that. I see a lot of people call me over and type in res and say, hey, it's just throwing an error. That's because they're just typing that into the window object. Right? We have to be in the debugger where it's like freezing the code. It will show you that it's like frozen in the source tab. Okay, so the response object. What do we use this for? Can anybody tell me about that? Henry. How are we going to use it? Yeah. So we do want the data that we need, but the data that we need is actually JSON. Right? We need this JavaScript object notation, and right now we don't. We have something else. We don't have JSON, we have a response object. So it has the status and it has this body, but it doesn't actually have this JSON with all the data. Jay Jones. Yeah, so we have to call and say we want this response as JSON. So we really have to say return res.json. And before that, we should also do a little check to see if we're actually, if our response is okay. And if it's not, we should throw an error. So I'm going to say, hey, if not okay, res.okay, we can throw an error. And we can just write like error.status text. Is that it? Yes, it would be. Thank you. Good catch. She says it should be res, not error, right? And if I am willing to throw an error, and I might get an error, what else do I need for a fetch? I need a catch, right? We got the pitcher, we need the catcher, right? Catch, I'm going to call it error. Again, this is just a variable representation, right? This name, it could be anything, but I'm only going to catch it if it's an error, so it seems like a good bet. And I'm just going to console log my error. I'm not actually really doing much to handle it, but that's okay. And maybe I'll just, instead of doing it, I'll just throw the whole response. Okay. So when we say return res.json, what does that actually return? See, I'm what? A promise, right? Res.json gives us another promise. Okay, so if we have another promise, what do we need to do? Yeah, right, we need to continue to chain these dot thens. So we can go, okay, let's say dot then. I'm just going to move this catch to a new line here. Then takes in a callback, which has a response. In this case, I'm going to call it users because it should be a bunch of users. And I'm going to say debugger. I'm going to save it. Oh, well, I'm sorry. I'm just going to make this res because I'm doing this as a function that I'm going to be able to reuse, right? If I did users, it would imply that I always have users, which I'm going to have users for the first callback, but not when I use this again. So let's try this and read the debugger this time. And let's go ahead and look at that res. And it's an array of objects. So, okay, so another piece of feedback that I got, which people said they really wanted help reviewing with, is keying into larger objects of JSON. Okay, so the way I would go about this and practice this is by putting in my debuggers like this and really examining the data I'm getting back. So I can see res. I see this as an array, so I know that I can access each element by an index. And I can see, like, okay, so let's say I isolated one of these. So if I was going to be iterating through them, which I am at some point, I'll say res at 0, just so I can grab one. And I go, okay, so this is an object, and these are the properties associated with it. So it's like, what if I wanted their company's catchphrase? I don't know why, but if I did, right, I would say, okay, I can see that from my object, there's a key called company. All right, so let me move on and type this part in. So I go res at 0 dot company. Okay. And then I examine the data again, and I see, okay, this gives me all of these properties. And so I can key into this again now and see I have a key of catchphrase. So if I really wanted to get the catchphrase, I would then do res at 0 dot company dot catchphrase. And I go, okay, that's how I'm finding it. So now I know, and then after playing around in here and finding it, I would copy this, and then I would put it in my code somewhere, because I would know that that's the exact pattern I need to access the data. Okay, it takes a little bit of practice, but using it through the debugger is super duper helpful. Questions on that process? Because a lot of people said they had trouble accessing data on JSON. Okay. If you're one of those, definitely try that. Just try to use the debugger more and just step through your data slowly. Take your time. The key there is to use the debugger. So with this response, though, I have this array, and I'm going to want to call this build select with it because I want to build a select down of names from that array. And our fetch data function takes in a callback. So I'm just going to go ahead and invoke that callback and pass in my res. So now I can move this select into my build select, and we can start building from this data. In this case, build select, maybe I will call this users. And let's go ahead and loop through these. So I'll say users.forEach. For each, I could say user, the singular version, right? And again, if I'm confused what user looks like, what am I going to do? I'm going to throw in a debugger. I know it's time consuming, but it's just the way the process. And it gets faster because you start to pick up patterns and you can kind of remember it better because you chunk it in with other things you've seen. But like in the beginning, like it's okay if it takes a while and you have to keep looking at the data. I go, oh, okay, so this is my user. This is my literal element that I'm on. And I needed their name. So I'll say user.name. I go, okay, so that works for one. What does my next object look like? I can click on this blue arrow, and this means continue to the next debugger. So I click continue. I'm caught. I can go back to my console, and I can look again, like this user looks like this. So this also has a user.name. Irvin Howell. Okay. Do they all, like, like if sometimes one thing is funny in the list. You know, not that you should always check all your data, but if one of them is breaking and you don't know which one to break, sometimes you have to walk through elements and figure out, like, what's wrong with it? Like, why is this breaking? You go, like, user.name, and then, like, maybe one doesn't have a name. And you go, like, oh, all right, I have to account for that. That's what's happening. Okay, so that seems to be working. So let's go ahead and create our option tags. So we'll say let option is document dot. I should spell something, right? Yeah. Document dot create element. say option. And I want to update the options inner text, yeah? So we'll say option dot inner text, and what do we want the text to be? User.name, right? So I want us to practice thinking ahead a little bit. So it says once we select the name, we're going to have to go select all the posts by that user, right? So ideally there would be a route that exists that's going to give us all the posts for one user. So let's go back to the API and see if anything can help us. Yes? Good question. The question is, if we created an option in the HTML, why do we have to create an option in the JS? So the option in the HTML is just acting as a default to tell the user what to do and won't be selected. We have to create an option in the JS because we're going to be iterating through all those users. We don't know how many users there will be, and we want to just for each user, we want to create an option tag. Do we see anything here that might be useful? For feed? Which posts? Up here? Maybe. So if I do posts here, and I open it up, we get all the posts for everybody. I would like all the posts for one user. And I don't want to do a bunch of filtering. Yeah, Brutus? What? Ooh, yeah, okay. So let's check this one out. So I could open up a new tab here, and this time I'm getting only the posts for user ID 1. Right? Let's experiment and make sure this also works for other user numbers, like Irving Clementine or whatever, Howell, Clementine Howell, something Howell. User number 2. Okay, so this looks like a better route. So what do I need from my users? I need their ID, right? So where should I keep that ID when I'm thinking about building this option tag? Okay. In the value, right? The option tags can have a value that isn't going to be shown to the user, but they'll still have that value. And so when we do something in our select, we can go ahead and grab that target's value. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll say value, option.value, sorry. Option.value is equal to user.id, which I think is the property. We should double check in our debugger here when I do a user.id. Yeah, so that does give us the value. And we also have to append each option to the select itself. So how do I do that? Yep. Select, got append child, option. Right? These have to be nodes, both of these. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. Let's see if this actually works. I think there's no debuggers anymore, right? Okay. So we'll refresh our page. Let's select a person, and we've got all these nice people. Is this disabled? No, that didn't work. I think it's because it has to be disabled, as in with the D, instead of disable. We want an option tag that is disabled. Doesn't quite work right. Perfect. Okay, and so then we need something to happen when there's a change, yes? And what is that thing we need to happen? We need an event listener, okay. So let's go ahead and grab the select again. We'll just grab that outside. I could just grab the select once at the top, but I don't, it's okay. I'm just going to do it like this. So we'll say select dot add event listener. And what's the event we want to listen for? Change. Changing. Do we care about the event?
Yes.
Yeah, right. This time we do, because we're not going to know what the change is without being able to have access to that event. Okay. You gave me a good look. E, event. I'll just write event so it's clear. And let's go ahead and throw in our debugger so we can really explore this event. So we refresh so we can get the most up-to-date changes. I'm going to click on somebody, and we hit our debugger, and now we can check the situation. So I'm going to say event. And our event looks like this. It's trusted. There's a target of select, current target of select. Those are the two types of things we usually care about, usually target. So we'll just try those out first. So I'll say event.target. Well, I should spell it right. Target, as I think David says. And then what do we want back from that? Fowler. Yeah, right. We want to check the value. So event.target.value, and we get 7. Okay, so we've isolated. We're able to get this exact value that we want. Awesome. Let's also just get the right route again. So it looks something like this. I'm copying that, and let's go ahead and call fetch data. Pass in the route, but instead of it being a 2, I'll just say event.target.value. And as the second argument, why doesn't it like that? Should be okay, yeah. Well, we'll see, yeah. And then we can also write a function called build posts. That will be the callback function. And let's go ahead and create that function. So we'll say const build posts. This is going to take in hopefully just the posts, and we'll throw in a debugger and see what the posts look like that were being passed to make sure everything works okay. So we'll go. We'll refresh our page. Let's go ahead and choose Irvin Howell, and we see we're hitting our debugger inside of build posts, and we can go ahead and take a look at what our posts are. Looks like they wrote 10 posts, and we have all of this data. So let's get so it's not so overwhelming. Let's just pick the first one so we can see this object a little more clear. There we go. Okay, posts, they have a body, they have a title. Cool. No big deal. So let's go ahead and build just some LIs inside of a UL. Let's also just put the UL in the page already and keep it empty. And that way we can just target it. But I mean, it's very easy to still just like go ahead and create it and append it to the body. But this just seems even easier. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and grab our UL. So we'll say let UL, and we'll say document dot query selector UL. And what do we need to do with our posts? Got to create LIs with the posts. Okay. And so in order to do that, what do I need to do with them? Yeah, right. We have to iterate through the posts. We'll say posts dot for each post. We want to create an LI. So I'll say let LI equal document dot. Yes. I did. Good catch. It's always the same form of misspelling too, right? Too bad it doesn't learn. Or me, too bad I don't learn either one. But they should learn. Okay, let's add an inner. What do we want inside of our li? We probably want the title. We probably want the body, right? Some like it depends. If it was part of the assignment, it'd probably be more specific, or it wouldn't be. But so let's go ahead and just create another like h3 and a p tag that we'll put inside of our li. And so we'll say inside of the h3 dot inner text, let's make it say the post dot title. And inside of the p, let's go ahead and make it the post dot body. Let's append those to the li. Li dot append child h3. Oops. Oh, I don't know what that's about. Li dot append child p, and we also need a ul dot append child li. Questions on any of that? Just lots and lots of children. And let's go ahead and try it. So we refresh the page, select somebody, and we see their posts. What's going to happen when I select another person? Yeah, it's going to append them below, right? It's going to keep going. So that sucks. How can I fix that? So. Okay.
I'll put it in select. Whatever.
Here, 34.
Yeah, right before that.
Okay, so fellas, once we grab our UL, why don't we just go ahead and make the inner HTML equal to an empty string, and that should clear it. Okay, let's try it. Refresh, and we have Aaron, Curtis, Clementine. Looks good. Right, so this is how fetch works. We only really use fetch one time up here. But this is our fetch. It's got a URL. The fetch, it returns a promise. That response we can check. We have to make sure whether or not that response is okay. Otherwise, we're going to throw an error. Then we have to return that response. Got its JSON. And then we can chain another promise that will have its response, and we can do whatever we want with it. And at the very end, we want to catch any potential errors. Okay, so let's adapt this now so that it works for axios. So I'm just going to duplicate this so that people can still see the old code. So what's the first thing we need to do when we're thinking about adding axios? Marvin? Yeah, that's right. I got to add the script for it. So I'm just going to go and find it. So I'll say axios npm, even though I know we're not npming it, it's just a script. But it will show us here how to install the script. Scroll down. This looks nifty. Copy that. What happened? Are you sure? Oh, nice. That would have been wild. Thank you, guys. Thank you all. Oh, did it again. This is harder than. This is the hardest part of the project. Okay, copy. Got it. Thank you. Everybody freaked out. Some people were like, I'm gonna see what happens here. I love it. I love the troublemaker. I'm the same way. Okay, and we will add that script. And so now we should be able to use axios. And so when we're using axios, there's a few differences, right? This is fetch. So if we say we don't know we can understand axios, but we don't understand fetch, they're not that different. Fetch just has this one extra step, and we have to check for this res okay. Otherwise it won't throw an error when it necessarily should, like 404. It's the only difference, that and that we have to return this res.json. But if we're using axios, we're just going to write axios.get. We're going to get rid of this if statement that's checking. So we're going to delete that. We're going to get rid of this res.json. And we're just going to then do and pass to our callback res.data. With axios, it always gives you back something where the JSON is res.data. It always gives you that key. I save that. We're going to refresh. It's taking a second. Oh, cannot read property data of undefined. Interesting. So something. Okay, well, I'm only calling data once. Let's just put a debugger in here and see where I'm screwing up. Oh, I see it. Anyone else see the error? I have dot then here and here. Right? I only need it the once. Right? It just should be axios.get URL dot then res callback res dot data. Now we can refresh. Sweat a little. Okay, it's working. Great. That's it. That's the only difference. That's how we can convert our fetch to our axios. Right? It doesn't need async await. It's just returning a promise. It's doing almost the same thing. There's just a minor difference. Any questions on that? No? Right, we don't need to do that because if it's like level 400 status or above, it will automatically throw the error for us. Great question. Marvin. Great question. So I have to do try catch when I'm doing async await. The reason I'm not doing async await in this lecture is because I want us to be able to have a little bit of separation of the things in our mind. I know it's the double bonus. Maybe John will go over it. He's doing async await, I think tomorrow, or not tomorrow because it's our weekend, but Saturday. And you'll see. But this works the same. So this is the try, and this is the catch. We're just changing promises. Any other questions on that? Okay, great. I'm going to stop the recording.